What's up, everybody? I'm Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock MBA. Today I'm sitting down with my friend and business partner, Joey Sturgis, and what we want to talk about today is if you grew up poor like we did, we want to help you understand that it is 100% possible for you to achieve financial freedom, even if you don't think you understand how to do it, even if you think you don't understand how money works, because I know I didn't understand that. I bet you probably didn't either. It can be figured out. So I guess just quickly, I will tell my version of your life story and tell me if I get any of it wrong.
Sure.
So you grew up in basically bumfuck Indiana, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like me. I grew up on welfare. You did too. And taught yourself how to first be a gold music producer. And then you decided you wanted to start a software company. So you taught yourself how to write audio plugins, which for anybody who doesn't know is really fucking hard. And then you decided to start the company that we work on together, URM Academy, which is an online education company for music producers. So you started out basically, you know, from very humble beginnings and have done a lot of stuff that to me is pretty impressive. And I want to help unpack that for everybody who's watching this. So did I get anything wrong?
No, that's correct. Yeah.
Well, I guess the first thing I would ask, like for me, it just never even occurred to me that I could do any of this stuff because I didn't really have any models who were successful, like in terms of like their careers, who were like wealthy or anything like that. Nobody in my family until I was older, nobody I grew up with, I literally didn't know anybody who was living any differently than I was. Did you have any like models for this stuff, or how did you like sort of get a line of sight that you could do this?
So, yeah, I guess the one thing that I'm really thankful for, and I think we all are now, is the internet, which has been, you know, such a democratizing thing across all kinds of industries. And so when I started, I was able to go online and see that, you know, there are guys out there that are doing stuff, but there's always like a contrast and a distance, right? Like you look at, you know, Andy Sneap, for example, one of the greatest metal producers of all time, and you know, you see he lives in a castle and he records like these huge metal bands, and you're just like, oh, that's so far away from where I'm at right now. But I also see that as motivation, and I think like for me, I was just driven towards the craft a lot, and so like I just wanted to learn how to EQ that kick drum just right to make it sound good. And so a lot of the time I would be also driven by the idea of putting it online so that people from all over the world could hear how I EQ'd that kick drum, and they could be like, you know, either like, oh, that's terrible, or, oh man, that sounds really good, you know, and that like kind of fueled me.
So just like the feedback from the community.
Yeah, and so in the early days, you know, we were on this thing called the Ultimate Metal Forum, and it was a place where like a bunch of people who were really competitive, actually, unnecessarily competitive online, we're trying to like make the best mix, right? And so like I was driven by that, and so we would all upload our mixes every week and try to have like the best kick sound or the best guitar sound or the best vocal sound, and everyone would pick it apart in the forums, and that really drove me. But you could see just through that experience, you could see that there were other people out there that were recording bands, making money. It was a really tight-knit online community, but it was still widespread. You know, you had people in Ireland, you had people in England, you had people in Australia, and they were all on that forum doing the work that all of us home recording people were doing. And so that was also inspiring too, you know, and that a little bit of that competitiveness and a little bit of that inspiration would drive me every day. Plus, when you start working with bands from your area, they're going to come into the ring with competitiveness as well. Like they're the local band from where their town is, and they have a band that they want to beat, and they have a goal to make their recording better than the next band down the block. And so when you combine all of that together, you know, it kind of drives you to do a good job. And I think the lesson to learn here is that if you do a good job, then the money will follow you. And so I was never focused on like, oh, how do I like pay my rent? I was just like, how do I do a freaking good job so that the next person who hears that thing will want to come and record with me?
Well, when did you first kind of start to believe that this could be your living, and not only could be your living, that you might actually make a respectable amount of money at it?
So it probably came somewhere towards, I mean, obviously towards the beginning, but like I remember I set up shop in my friend's garage, and he was like, "Yeah, you can just come in here and mess around with stuff while I'm asleep because I get up early and I work, and so I go to bed early." And I was the type of person to stay up late all the time, and so he gave me a key, and I was coming in and messing around, and so I started recording some bands and stuff. And I'm kind of fast forwarding here, but I got to a point where I was able to basically put myself online on MySpace and then get people in bands to give me like $100 a song. When I got to that point and it kept coming in, you know, I would take the next, the band would come in, I'd record it, I'd take that song, put it on MySpace to refresh my playlist, to have something new up.
So they were just doing like singles with you for $100 a song.
Yeah, like singles, EPs, couple hundred here, couple hundred there. And the thing that really all made it make sense in my mind is that my friend was renting me the garage for $500 a month. So I was like,
kind of a lot.
all I gotta do is record 5 songs and I got rent covered. And I can stay in here all month and I can do whatever I want. So I would get that 5 or 10 songs, and if I did 10 songs, and boom, I just made $500 that month, plus paid my rent. And so I just kept doing this to the point where eventually, like, I got bigger and bigger bands, to the point where some of the bands I was getting were signed. And then I was talking to labels instead of bands. And now all of a sudden I'm like, how about 300 a song, And of course they're like, oh yeah, that's great. So that's when I really started to be like, maybe there's something to this.
Yeah, well, you are very, like, at least as long as I've known you, like, you're very confident. You always believe in yourself, or at least that's the way it seems. Did you ever have any moments where you didn't, or where you questioned if you were good enough, or whether you could pull this off? Everybody has those moments. What were yours?
Sure. So the first time I ever felt that was when I recorded The Devil Wears Prada, and we made an EP, and I felt very confident about my EP, but only when I thought about it from the perspective of the band. I felt like, I made this really great thing for the band. I made it what they wanted it to be. But then they got signed, and now all of a sudden I'm thinking to myself, okay, well now, like, a label has to like this, and now there's all this other people all these fans that are going to come in, and they have to like it too. And so I was very nervous when they decided to hire me again to do the album. I was like, I don't know if I can produce a product that the label's going to like, because I've never worked with a label before. But everyone sort of like was contributing confidence to me. The label was like, oh, if you do what you did on the EP, it's gonna be great. And the band was like, yeah, if we just, do what we did on the EP, but just make it a little better, it's gonna be good. And so that kind of helped me hone it in. And so that went well. Obviously, you can see, like, I worked with the band so many times. We did like 7 records together or something, and everything went down in history. But there was this other time too, where I was extremely I don't know the word, but this, like, basically a metal band came in. They were very intimidating. They were like, this has to be the best metal record ever made or something. It was like a death metal band. The band was Oceano, and they had like these hot, like they just got this huge record deal with their label. The label's putting a lot of money into them, and they had like these really, really high expectations.
Was this like their first one, an earache or something?
Yeah, exactly. And I just remember being like sort of intimidated, and so I went home and I thought about it, and I was like, I know that I can do this. And so I came back that next day, and I had a completely different attitude. This was like the second or third day into the recording process. And I came in and I was like, all right, guys, I think we need to actually have a meeting. And like, I've never done anything like this before, so it was super awkward for me to look at people in the face and be like, we need to have a meeting, So I did that. They all like sat down, like lined up on a couch or something, and I was just like kind of pacing back and forth on the floor in front of them, and I was like, I'm gonna make this the best death metal. Like, I just kind of gave them this speech that I was gonna do a really good job, and that set the precedence for one, it like eliminated any doubts that they might have had about me working on the record, because none of them knew who I was. And 2, it set this precedent that I was going to do a really good job. And so by doing that and putting that out there into the air, it sort of like held me to it. It was like a contract for myself, right? I was like, okay, well, now that I've said this, I'm going to look like an idiot if I don't do a good job. So that pushed me the entire way through the whole project. Like even towards the end, they were like, man, this mix sounds pretty good. And I'm like, I think it could be a little better. And so I was being harder on myself than the band was. And so that really drove me to like do a good job.
Do you ever have moments now like that you are a successful grown up? You know, you go to nice restaurants and stuff like that. Do you ever have moments where you still feel poor? Because like I definitely do. Like when I go to restaurants like that, even though I make enough money that I belong there, sometimes I still feel like I don't belong there. Or like if I'm in a room with successful business people, like I feel like someone's going to kick me out because I'm the poor kid.
Right. Yeah. I think about that all the time. It's interesting because it's like, you know, the first time you can afford to go to a place and they like serve you some caviar and all of a sudden you're like, well, I don't really even know how to eat this. Like I think everyone goes through that, right? Like there's always a first time for everything. And the people who are rich and like have earned it, they were poor at one point too. So they've had to learn what it is to earn money like that. And they have learned what it is to like maintain that and make that sustainable. And I think the lifestyle that comes along with it is always going to be new and awkward, and you just sort of find your way through it, you know, and sometimes you learn like there's certain things that come along with that you don't necessarily have to like. It's not like every rich person eats caviar,
right?
You know what I mean? Like,
and I don't specifically mean like, hey, how do you conduct yourself at a fancy restaurant? What I'm getting at is like that if you grow up poor, I think oftentimes like you carry that with you your whole life in lots of situations. Like at least to me, like it's like it's almost like you have a stink on you, you know. And I'm always worried, can people smell it? You know.
Well,
and I don't think they can, but it's just always like in the back of my head in a lot of situations.
Absolutely, and it's all about how you conduct yourself and how you think of like the perspective that you put everything in your relationships when you're talking to other people or working with other people. Like if I walk into a room of a bunch of millionaires and I have this sort of feeling that I'm poor, they're all going to see me that way. But if I walk in there and I'm like, you know what, I might actually have something to contribute to this room right now, this conversation. There's a reason why I'm in here. And even if I don't know what it is, it's something. And maybe I won't find it out tonight, or maybe I will, but that always hones it in for me. That always makes me feel like, okay, like obviously I'm in this room for a reason, and I probably have something that of value to contribute to any conversation or anyone in this room. At least one thing.
It's not like you just opened the wrong door off the street and like, oh, geez, you know, like your life led you there, so you belong there.
Exactly, and I think that's true for everyone else in the room too, in their own way.
Well, any last words of wisdom or advice or guidance that you might give to somebody who, you know, grew up poor, maybe they still are poor, and they feel like I did. I felt like I just assumed that I was always going to be a loser, you know, like because that was just like my lot in life. Any words for anyone out there who might feel that way?
Yeah, I would say the easiest thing that anyone can do to lose is to give up. And the hardest thing to really like embrace is persistence. And if you can be persistent and you just keep trying and keep grinding, at some point it will eventually pay off, and it's going to seem like forever. But if you keep at it, like persistence is the one thing that people can't take away from you, right? If you like keep trying, just keep punching that wall, you might break some bones and lose some skin and stuff, but like eventually you're going to break through. And that's what I've always just like, if I have a problem in front of me, I just keep trying to attack it over and over again. And maybe if I find a method that doesn't work, I try something else, or maybe I look at it differently, or I approach the problem in a different way. Whatever it is, I'm always persistent towards what I'm trying to do, and it eventually pays off.
Hard work always pays off. You heard it here. Joey, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Finn McKenty. This is Joey Sturgis. This is the Punk Rock MBA. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.